what's going on, everybody? It's Tuesday, August 10th. Hey, a little note here. Stephanie Kelton, the very well-known economist who wrote the book, The Deficit Myth, and she's a, big-time MMT, spreading the word of MMT. She did a TED Talk, and while the video is not available and won't be for a while, a transcript of her talk is available online. I have it on my blog. If you go to mikenormaneconomics.blogspot.com, you'll see it, or you can just Google it. It's the title of her talk is something I always wanted to do. Stephanie Kelton, and she's really, really good at encapsulating the ideas of a government that is a currency issuing entity, and really, I think, spelling it out in a way that obliterates the nonsense that we always hear about how we're going to pay for it and we don't have the money. When you read her talk that she gave, and I really recommend that you look it up, either go to my blog and check it out or Google it. I think she did a great job in that talk. Anyway, I'm looking forward to when the video comes out, even though I read the transcript. But yeah, so today the Senate passed a $1.2 trillion infrastructure deal. It's still, I would say, still a long way from getting done because the House, so far, there's resistance in the House because the House Democrats wanted to go alongside a $3.5 trillion, the reconciliation deal, and it's not sure that can pass. But anyway, it looks like, and I've mentioned this I think in the prior video that I did yesterday, it looks like we're kind of moving towards some kind of an infrastructure deal, and that's going to be bullish. That is going to be bullish, and it could be bullish in a sustained fashion. I mean, we could see really elevated economic growth. And let's face it, these are the kind of national investments we need to make. I mean, when Ted Cruz the other day said, we're borrowing money from the Chinese and we're sending, we're passing along the debt to our, this stuff that we hear all the time, which is ridiculous, as if passing along crumbling third world dilapidated infrastructure to our kids and our grandkids is some kind of a great inheritance for them. No, it is terrible. It is the very definition of a massive loss in standard of living, and it's something that definitely needs to be done. Anyway, I'm not going to get off on a political tangent. I'm just saying that the infrastructure bill is moving in the right direction. As far as the flows are right now, I mean, they're good. We saw in June there was a very noticeable and marked decline in daily flows, all right, that I'm talking about daily Treasury withdrawal spending. That was noted. I think I spoke about that. I anticipated that. I said, the unemployment benefits cuts were going to lead up to that. But since July, those flows bottomed out and they've been kind of picking back up again. And I've even noticed a gradual reacceleration. It's very modest, but there is a gradual reacceleration going on in the flows, even when you compare them year over year. The deficit is back up year over year. I think it's something like 180 billion over same time last year. And again, the way to think about the deficit is net transfers from the government to the non-government, that's the economy. It's in addition to income and savings. It is very positive. By the way, in that TED Talk of Stephanie Kelton, she puts up a graph of first the government balance, which is like sharply negative, right? Which everybody looks at and like, oh my God. But then, on the flip side of that, there's always a positive and a negative. Like if you're saying the government's deficit is the negative, the positive is that is the net transfer to the penny of the non-government's financial balances. So if you're running a 2.8 trillion or a 3 trillion deficit, by definition, what you're saying is the non-government's financial balances have increased by 3 trillion. And she also gets into the idea of how is this dispersed? How is this, shared or disseminated in the economy? Like there's good ways to do it, and there's not so good ways to do it. The not so good way is like the way we've been doing it for the last 40 years, is giving massive tax breaks to the wealthiest people in our society who don't need massive tax breaks. And again, I've said this many times, tax cuts are the fiscal equivalent of spending increases. So when any one of these guys say, we're going to give tax cuts to the rich because that's a trickle down thing, which is a bunch of nonsense, that's essentially the same thing. That is the same thing as saying we're going to write checks to the rich. No need for that. They already have money. But the pandemic showed that transfers to the general population, when you had the unemployment benefits, when you had increase in medical care coverage, when you had the free testing and then the vaccination, all these transfers which benefited the broad population. We had the shortest recession in history in the midst of maybe the worst pandemic ever seen. So there are good ways to run deficits where you reduce inequality, where the broader population is lifted up. I thought that was good that she brought that out, because it's one thing to run a deficit when you're cutting checks to rich people. There's no need for that. We also run big deficits on defense spending, and I think the United States spends something like more than the next 5 or 7 countries combined on national defense. So it's a question of political priorities. We know this, but every time something comes up of a national focus type of issue, then it's always like, how are we going to pay for it? How are we going to pay for it? That's not the question to ask. It's never a question monetarily of how you are going to pay for it. Okay? Congress authorizes a certain amount of spending, and then the checks go out, or they're electronic transfers, and they are cleared through the Fed. Very simple. All right? It's more a question of, do we have the resources? Do we have the manpower, the labor, the workers? Like for now, the infrastructure deal, right? Do you have the construction workers? Do you have the physical resources, the concrete, the steel, the things we're going to need? Do you have the architects and the engineers that are going to work on this? Those are the considerations, and those are the real constraints. If any constraints exist, and if you want to talk how you're going to pay for it, you got to frame that in real terms. Do you have the people, available to work to do it? Do you have the resources available to make it happen? It's not about the money. The money is a keystroke on the computer. Anyway, let's get back to the markets for a second. Look, gold and silver languishing. They're a little bit up today, but after a big drop, and I think I talked about this yesterday, when you see some kind of a flash crash, like a big drop like that, or even sometimes a big spike higher, it sends out reverberations. I mean, there isn't usually an immediate reversal of that. It takes time. And I used the example of the British pound flash crash, I think it was 2016. It took time, but all of that was reversed and then some. I mean, the entire decline, which was related to Brexit, was reversed. So yeah, that's going to happen. The fundamentals, look, economic growth is not negative for metals. That's just a fact. I mean, those are more of an economic barometer than they are of inflation or anything else. So it's not negative for metals. And again, fiscal flows are good. With that, you got to be bullish on risk assets, which means stocks are going to go higher. See everybody tomorrow. Bye.